Hey everybody, Lieutenant Joe here for the Blue Heart webcast. So I get a lot of emails and texts from officers from all over the place in my classes. They read articles or whatever, and they have questions about technical things, how to do certain things in law enforcement. But one big one I get a lot is, how do you deal with a toxic boss? How do you deal with a problem supervisor or boss? Well, this is a reality in every business, not just law enforcement. There are some people that are amazing, unbelievable supervisors, leaders, and in law enforcement, chiefs, deputy chiefs, captains, lieutenants, sergeants. There are some people that are just really, really good at what they do, and then there's other people that are not so good. Well, the first thing I would say is you want to get your head around and be righteous with the fact that you have to respect the rank. Now, I know some people are going to say, yeah, well, my chief or my sergeant, and that's true. Like I said, some people are not good at being leaders. They're not born leaders. They haven't learned the skills, and they're difficult. And I understand that. But the reality is we have to respect the rank first and foremost. This is really more for your head than anything else, because if you respect the rank, then you can avoid some pitfalls of having to deal with a toxic leader, toxic boss. Because if we allow ourselves to be upset and say things and do things that are going to lead to problems for us because we didn't respect the rank. Now, I worked for lots of different kinds of leaders in lots of different kind of industries at this point in my life. When I was in law enforcement, I look back and I say, I had some chiefs that were great, some chiefs that were horrible, and some chiefs that were mediocre. Same thing for captains, sergeants, all the way down the line. Everybody in a position of leadership, I've had good, bad, and indifferent. And what I always tried to do was stick to the work, right? Do the work I'm supposed to do, follow the rules, get to understand your leader, how they like to do things, he or she, how they like to do it, and then try and model your work so that it fits within that framework, so to speak. All right. When you work for a great leader, it's easy. It's much easier to do things. So I worked for a particular lieutenant when I went into the detective bureau, who was just absolutely amazing. This man was great. He came to me before I got moved into the detective bureau, and he said, listen, I want you to come in. You're a hard worker. You're curious about things, and you push hard. That's what I want. Give me 40 good hours, and I'll pay you overtime for everything else. Whatever else you're going to do, be aggressive. Just let me know what you're doing so that I can answer questions when somebody asks. This allowed me and my partners great freedom to do police work. So we went all over the place. We went out of state, we were in state, we went all over the place doing police work, and we kept the boss informed. And he, like I said, he was a good man. Unfortunately, he passed away early in life. That led to a chain of changes and whatnot. So a particularly negative boss that we had to deal with started out with the greatest of potential. Strong personality, been on the job a long time. And we really thought that if he could manage to control his ego and the way he treated people, we thought he could be a transformative chief of police. At least that's how he spoke as he was working his way through the process. We really thought it was going to be amazing. Unfortunately, once he got the position, his personality came out. And his personality, he did not like to be challenged. He saw everything as a challenge. He saw everything as a challenge, and therefore he reacted. Knee-jerk reaction was, you're challenging me, and he would attack. So he also had a way of, you're either on his team 100% or you're not. And if you're not, you're going to suffer the consequences. This was detrimental to our entire agency. And there are toxic leaders like this at all levels, across all levels of law enforcement. And like I said, every company. In the private sector, I worked for some leaders that were just absolutely brilliant visionaries who believed in their team. And they simply said, here's an idea I have, here's a concept I want to address, go and address it. And that's what we did. We went out and we addressed it. We solved problems. We created products. We did things that took the company forward. Again, very good leader, visionary, gave us the power to do what we needed to do. Not everyone's so good. So recently I wrote an article. It'll be up on my website, pangarotraining.com, pretty soon. We just updated the website. Go take a look. We're going to have classes listed up there for the fall and maybe this summer and then the fall. We've been trying to build out the website for a while, and it finally got built out. I think it looks nice, but we're going to add a lot of content to it. All right. So I wrote this article. It's in my LinkedIn page. If you go to Pangaro Training on LinkedIn, you go to the articles, you can see this. All right. So I'm not going to read word for word, but I'm going to talk about the 10 signs that you might be a toxic leader and how your behavior impacts everyone around you. Now, there's two purposes for this. This is not to pick on anybody's boss. This is not to, us versus them and go against, the administration. That's not what this is about. We're a team. We have a serious job to do. So if you are a supervisor and you're watching this and you're new and you want to know, am I a good leader or not? Well, some of these things I put in here, you need to ask yourself that question. If you're about to become a supervisor or a chief or some kind of a ranked position, do you behave in any of these ways? Because they're detrimental, and you don't want to be that. You want to be a good leader for the men and women in your agency. You want your agency to rise and be great. You want your men and women to love coming to work to do such an amazing job we have. All right. So have you ever worked for a toxic leader? Most of us have at one point or another in our careers. We see the damage they can do to individuals and to an organization. We know that that's true. I worked for a very toxic leader. He took a thriving organization and over time crushed the spirit of the majority of the employees and turned the team members against each other. It really destroyed morale and it destroyed the productivity of the agency. Did he want to do that? I don't know if that was his goal. That was the result of his leadership or lack thereof, no matter how you look at it. All right, the environment became so destructive that the goal for every employee was to stay under the radar. Don't let them notice me. I'm not doing anything that's going to bring attention, good or bad, to me. I'm just going to do the bare minimum so I don't get in trouble. That's not the way to run an organization or for an organization to function. And it's certainly not the way for a law enforcement agency to function. We all know the reality is a aggressive, proactive law enforcement agency is the only thing that keeps communities safe. Officers going out there, being curious, looking for problems to protect the citizens that they serve, right? Look for crime, look for criminals, and stop them before they hurt people. So the fact that we had a very aggressive, professional police agency, and it was ruined because of toxic leadership. All right. Let's see. People broke out into teams that were either trying to weather the storm and avoid problems, or those that choose to try and appease the leader, right? Trying to appease the leader and win favor so that they could reap some benefits. You can already see how that would divide an agency. For me, myself personally, I allowed myself to believe the words of this individual, that he was going to come in and be a transformational leader, that he wanted to change the bad things of the agency, the problems, the employees, some of them who didn't do any work. He really wanted to motivate them and get them back on the team. And I allowed myself to believe that's what he was going to do. Over time, it's not how it went. And it was unfortunate. And over time, as I got promoted, and now I'm a lieutenant in the agency, in the executive wing, I had to make a choice career-wise. I had to choose either my career and what's good for me, or be a leader from where I was on the ladder for the men and women of my agency? Would I advocate for them? Or would I advocate for me? That's really the choice that you have sometimes when you're put in leadership positions. I made a choice to advocate for the men and women in my agency. That led me to conflict with the administration. It led me to be put in positions where I probably would have had better positions. I would have had more promotions. I could have ended my career as a captain, if not chief, had I decided to be on the appeasement team as opposed to the, other team. And the other team was basically, these are men and women just kind of laying low. And I felt it wasn't right the way they were treated. And I would stand up for them in the meetings. And over time, I was asked not to come to the meetings anymore because I didn't understand, and nor would I give blind loyalty. Now, this is not about me. This is about understanding as a leader. Isn't that what you're supposed to do? Aren't you supposed to stand up for your people, for the men and women? When you see something that's not right, you correct it. Even if I have to say, hey, I was wrong about that. Well, that's what I did. I tried to model that as much as I possibly could to be the leader I always hoped I would have as a leader. And like I said, that led to a lot of detrimental things happening to me in my career. All right. So you say to yourself, if it breaks into two teams, you know that that's not good already. In lots of cases, punishment or harassment depended on who you were in the organization. If you were on his team, things were overlooked. Mistakes were overlooked. Problems were overlooked. But if you weren't on that team, every little thing would result in some kind of harassment, some kind of departmental charge or a write-up or something. It became toxic. The place was toxic. It was really uncomfortable. All right. So the question that many of us might have is, why does this leader behave this way? Can't he or she see what they're doing to the organization? Now, I'm not talking about the person I dealt with. Now, I'm talking about any toxic leader in an organization. Wouldn't we say, don't they understand this? Don't they get it? Don't they see what they're doing to the agency? Don't they see people being like a zombie squad? All of a sudden, productivity goes down. But hey, there's no complaints, right? That was another chief we had. The less people did, the better off it was, because you know what? Then there's nobody complaining. Then I don't have any problems. I can just do my thing and we move along. But we were not really serving our community, right? When productivity goes down, when morale goes down, it was problematic. All right. So that's kind of the question. Why do these toxic leaders do it? Well, I think some of the reasons they do it is that they don't know any better, right? They don't know any better. It's my way or the highway. They get ego involved, and their ego is, I said so, I'm in charge, and I'm going to fight you every step of the way because right, wrong, or indifferent, I'm in charge. That is an abuse of power, and it does not serve the organization. All right, so let's see. Some 10 traits commonly displayed by toxic leaders. Now, again, go to Pangaro Training on LinkedIn, and you can read the whole article. There's a lot more information in here, but I'm going to cover these 10 things. All right. If this is what you ask yourself, if you're going to be a leader, if you are a leader or whatever, you micromanage everything. If you constantly hover, correct, override your team's decisions, you're signaling you don't trust them. Micromanagement suffocates creativity and slows productivity. Absolutely true. And it's not just in police work. Every organization I've ever been a part of, when you have a micromanager that's on top of if you have your people, train them and then trust them to go and do the work. All right. Number 2, you take credit, but you shift blame. When things go good, oh yeah, my people, me. When things go bad, him, her, right? If you're the leader, everything that happens under your watch is your responsibility. If it goes well, congratulate the people who did the work great. If it doesn't go well, you retrain, right? Number 3, you lead through fear. Yelling, intimidation, threats, and humiliation may get short-term compliance, but they create long-term resentment. Now, we all know that there's people like this that are out there in all kinds of workplaces. They intimidate, They throw their weight around because I said so. And that's no way to lead any organization. So if that's the way you are, if that's the way you behave, you need to look in the mirror and say, why am I doing that? Am I not confident in what I do? Do I not really trust my people? Do my people need more training? Right? That's could be a reality, but you want to ask yourself why. Playing favorites. Now, I don't think any of us as human beings can avoid sometimes playing favorites. I know when I got promoted to lieutenant and I went from the detective bureau after 12 or 13 years and I went back out to the road, now I'm back in the patrol division and I have sergeants that I haven't worked with. They were sergeants in patrol. I had to trust them. I knew they were good. I researched them. I always heard them on the radio. I saw what they were doing. I read their reports. So I knew they were good. And I had to trust them. I had to be vulnerable to them. I went to them and said, listen, I'm the lieutenant of the squad. It's going to be my vision, and I'm going to pass it on to you. And then you run with it. They're your people on this squads, right? They're yours. Do what's right by them. Here's what I expect, and here's what I can do to help you, right? And I found that worked great. But I had to be vulnerable and tell them, I haven't been in patrol in over 10 years. Right. So I need you to give me some insight into some of the problems you've had and things that are going on so that I can adopt and understand that and lead properly. You don't listen. If employees feel dismissed, interrupted, or ignored, they stop offering ideas. Now, I saw this in the private sector. Somebody's coming up with ideas and the boss just keeps shutting them down, or the first level supervisor doesn't want to look like they didn't come up with an idea. So no, that's no good, right? Wrong. Always asking your people. So I do a class on leadership. It's a 2-day leadership class for sergeants and lieutenants. And one of the things I talk about is finding ways to help the men and women on your squads do more than just push a radio car all day long, right? Help them to be great investigators. Help them to be great cops. Give them extra training. Let them do things, right? In a lot of agencies, they say, well, patrol officers, you're report takers. No, you're not. You're criminal investigators until you can't investigate anymore. So listen to your people, what they have to say, right? You're emotionally volatile. Mood swings, unpredictable reactions, emotional outbursts force employees into survival mode. How do you behave in the workplace, right? Hugely important to be introspective and look at yourself, right? I knew from being a detective for many years that I dealt with very high pressure situations, high profile things. I had to deal with people at every level of society. So I had to control how I dealt with things, how I spoke to people. When I went back to patrol, I knew that I could be perceived as being too nice. And what do you do with too nice people? You get over on them. So I had to be crystal clear and say, do not mistake my niceness for weakness. I just happen to be a nice guy. I want to hear what all of you have to say. I want to hear your ideas. We're having accidents on Route 35 and Smith Street. How do you think we can handle that? And I would listen to the people who are out there in the street and say, that's a good idea. Why don't we do that? We're having burglaries in the apartments. What do you think? How can we solve that? And listen to what they have to say, right? Always try and do that. But I wasn't emotionally volatile. I knew other people were. They would immediately go off and start screaming and holler. And those people didn't, okay, just don't get the boss upset, right? That's no way to run an organization. All right. You set unrealistic expectations. Demanding constant overtime, impossible deadlines, or perfection creates burnout and drives good employees away. Now, there's differences in agencies, right? We know some agencies are very proactive and they want you to get out there and do it. It all depends on the leadership. Other places might be ticket crazy because we all know tickets raise revenue. So tickets show that my people are doing their job. Get out there, tickets. Okay, the purpose of tickets is to manage people driving their vehicles so they don't have accidents. That's the purpose of it, right? So what kind of expectations are we setting of our people? Are we expecting them to be great at stuff that they've never been trained in? Get them the training. Number 8, do you withhold information? Do you have information, but you don't pass it out because you're keeping it close to the vest because you want to see how it works out first? Be transparent. Tell people what's going on. Tell them what you expect of them. You avoid accountability. This goes along with that. If it turns out great, it's because of me. If it turns out bad, it's because of them. Wrong. Accountability means if your people do something wrong, it's because you did not lead them properly. Now, there's a lot of things today. Leading them properly might mean providing more training. It might be providing verbal counseling. It might be providing discipline, right? But if your squad, if your people are failing, that's the leader's fault for not addressing it properly. So you want to make sure you do that. And number 10, you discourage growth or independence. You feel threatened by strong performers. You block promotions, refuse to delegate. You're not leading, and you're limiting. So this is a big one. And there's other things here we're going to go into on another video. But right now, when I look at this, promotions are often given to those who deserve them, and sometimes they're not. Sometimes people are connected. Sometimes people are favorites. Sometimes they're just good test takers. So we want to make sure that we do right by our people. And if you're going to be a leader, if you are a leader and you're watching this is not an attack on you. Look at those things. Go read the article in its fullness. I think it'll be helpful to you. Maybe I'll put the link maybe in the show so you can go right to it. Do what's right. By being a leader, you have more responsibility to do the things right, not just to make you look good or for you to feel like you're in command. Being a good leader means worrying about the men and women that you lead. Help them to grow. There's nothing better for me as a leader than to see the people that I helped that were below me in rank, to see them rise, to see them be great, to see them solve cases, make arrests, become leaders in their own, and do better than I ever did. To me, to be a brick in their wall is one of the greatest things I can do as a person who's been privileged to be in a position of leadership. So I want to thank you all for being here. And remember, like and share and tell your friends about this. We're going to do more about leadership for those who are going to be leaders. We're going to talk about people who are leaders and some stories maybe of how things went good and bad. But leadership is important. Every organization needs good leaders. Be a good leader, become a good leader. All right. This is Lieutenant Joe for the Blue Heart Webcast. We will talk to you down the road.